Terry calling
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have not seen him,
you.
but I did leave the door open, or I'm not.
You may be
seems
sitting
likely.
in the wrong here. You may want to rethink that.
All right, y'all, we'll get started here shortly. We're just giving Sam Payne a quick minute if he gets here or not.
Who's Sam Payne? Sam will not be here. He's in the hospital.
That's what I thought.
I did not know
Sam,
that.
just so you know, has had major surgery, so I just got off the phone with his daughter. So,
Okay, thank you for letting me know, Shane. That's what I had thought.
I had no idea.
why you stood me up today.
Yeah, I'd say.
Does that mean we don't have a quorum? Don't we have to have? Well, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe not. Maybe we're good.
So we can move forward, but that's majority, correct?
Oh, we gotta vote to send
All right, y'all. We'll
for it to work.
All right, we'll go ahead and get this meeting started. Before we get going here, I want to remind everyone, if you guys wish to speak, make sure your guys' name and address is recorded. That way, when you guys get to the podium, we know who's speaking today. There's multiple people. Keep your guys' time limited and respectful. With that said, I'll go ahead and call this special meeting for March 25th to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mike Nichols.
Here.
Scott Highlander.
Here.
Isaac Chavez.
Present.
Charles Bates. Sam Payne.
All right, we got a roll call moving forward here. We'll take a look at the minutes from November 20th. These minutes might be something we have to table here due to attendance. I take a motion to table them, or no, I'm sorry, wrong ones. Yeah, I take a motion to table the minutes from November 20th.
So moved.
I will second. First and a second. Can we get a roll call, please?
Mike Nichols.
Aye.
Scott Highlander.
Aye.
Isaac Chavez.
Aye. Taking a look at the minutes from January 24th, or January 14th, I'm sorry. We'll have to do the same. We'll open a motion to table the minutes from January 14th.
Make a motion to table the minutes.
First, I get a second.
I'll second.
All right, first and a second. Roll call, please.
Mike Nichols.
Aye.
Scott Highlander.
Aye.
Isaac Chavez.
Aye. All right, we'll make it forward here. Keep things going with the agenda. Just want to double check here that we've had no conflict of interest from the board of the petitions being heard today. All right, hearing none, keep things rolling. Today, we're going to be looking at public hearing docket 2026-002. Petitioner is stamped Frankfurt Sewing LLC requesting a special exception and 6 developmental standard variances for the following. The special exception is to allow a medical clinic in an industrial zoned district. The 6 variances are for parking spaces and required buffer yards. Liz, can we please have the staff report?
Yes, good evening. All right, so first off, I'm Liz Ditzel. I think most of you know me, but helping you guys out with some planning duties. Well, I think the mayor's figuring out how she wants to handle planning long-term. So went ahead and prepared a staff report for you for tonight. As you noted, the applicant is stamped Frankfurt SOIN. And we're looking for a special exception for a medical health clinic, which is use 9.05, medical and dental offices. And then there's 6 developmental standard variances from impervious surface, for a parking lot in a front yard setback, for a parking lot in a required side buffer yard area, parking in the required State Road 28 green space, and then reductions to required plantings and mounding for the State Road 28 green space, and reductions to parking lot perimeter plantings required in the State Road 28 overlay. I would note from the get-go that this is a situation where you can do different things with different requests. Sometimes when requests come to the BZA, they're interdependent, where you kind of have to handle them all or none. But this is a situation where you could approve a special exception and then do different things with different variances. So you can choose when you get to the point of making motions how you want to organize those, if you want to do everything together or if you want to do things in different subsets based on how you feel. This property in particular is zoned industrial, as is all the property surrounding it in all directions. In 2004, the State Road 28 overlay standards were adopted, both in the city of Frankfort as well as in the unincorporated areas surrounding to guard Frankfort's gateway. There was a large planning effort to create those documents. Those are there's a primary and a secondary tier. If you're not familiar, the primary tier is the stuff that fronts 28, and then the secondary is behind that. And the primary tier has the most restrictive standards out of the 2 tiers. The neighboring hotel, which is next to this, is a non-conforming site. It was constructed in 1997 before the overlay adoption. But in this case, when we initially looked at this, I thought it also had been constructed in the 90s, but it was not. It was actually constructed under the previous city administration, several back, with a previous administrator that issued permits for the site after annexation without having sent the site through City Plan Commission for plan review or the Board of Zoning Appeals for developmental variances, nor was compliance with planning and zoning regulation at that time done by either the developer or caught by the city office. So it turns out that it's actually an illegal site by zoning definition. Staff does not feel it would be appropriate to attempt to remove the building or parking lot or force it to fully comply, because even though it's not legal non-conforming, a permit was issued to build it. And the fact that a previous administrator acted outside of their authority and error does not change the fact either that it is illegal with respect to its compliance or the fact that it was built. So we just have to, in cases like this, work with it as best we can from where we are now, because neither the current owners, who were not the developers, nor any of you as decision makers can go back and undo what's already there. But parts of the ordinance that talk about legal nonconformities and the rights that they have do not apply to this site. In terms of site characteristics, this is at the southwest corner of West State Road 28 and South 200 West. It's Lot 4 in the Frankfort Commercial Park. There's 3 separate units inside this building. 2 are rented by governmental entities, which are a permitted use in the industrial district, all districts actually. And those are the Bureau of Motor Vehicles and Child and Family Services. The hope is to rent the 3rd unit to Valley Oaks for a mental health clinic, but since that is a special exception use in the industrial district, that brings it before this board. Clinton County has been working for some time to find a replacement service for Howard Community Health to serve local mental health needs. Right now, people have been having to travel to Kokomo or Lafayette to help, to get help for the last few years when they're dealing with mental health crises. Valley Oaks has agreed to locate offices in the community, and they believe this building is the best option for them. The site does have enough parking and space to meet the unified development requirements for a medical clinic. So that's important because regardless of what you do with the variances, there's already enough parking there to meet standards. Whether they choose to add additional or not is a different topic than if you can approve the use as meeting the standards that exist in your ordinance. The reason they are considering more spaces that generate the variances is Valley Oaks has a number of part-time employees that don't work full-time. So the zoning ordinance calculates parking by whole employees. But in this case, you've got several part-times that their shifts overlap. So that generates just a few more people than what would normally be anticipated when you do a square footage calculation, or you look at just doctors in a conventional clinic. There are on the third page, there's a site plan that shows you this from above on the aerials and shows, we'll get into variances after the special exception, but it shows where that parking lot is going to be. The actual clinic itself will be entirely within the existing building. No exterior changes to the building other than some building mounted signage are planned. So there's no concerns there with regards to the ordinance. There's some photographs on the 4th page. Just to help you see what's at the site. I'm not going to read through it in complete detail, but I did include, since it seemed like when your previous administrator was doing staff reports, he put your ordinances in full, so I wanted to stay the same format. I did include all the ordinances that relate on pages, or I guess page 5, but they're lengthy, so unless we need to go back and reference them, I'm not going to make you sit through me reading them. And so I'm going to move with that into the special exception request analysis and look at that first. So in seeking approval for a special exception use, there's a series of findings that must be found to be met in order to approve that. If any of them are not found to be met, then you have to deny. So first, the proposed use conforms to the district provisions in which it will be located and the general regulations of the ordinance. A clinic is a special exception in the industrial district, so it may or may not be appropriate in a given location. There's no additional specific standards for this use. It is able to meet all required parking standards, and there's no additions being planned for the building. So regardless of the variances, all requirements will be met if the board approves the special exception. They do plan to put a building mounted sign on. We've checked that and it also conforms with the regulations, so the finding would appear to be met. 2, the proposed use shall not involve an element or cause a condition that may be dangerous, injurious, or noxious to any other person or property and shall comply with the performance standards herein. So again, while this requires a special exception, this is going to be all inside the building, similar to other professional offices. And while it is handled differently by the zoning ordinance because governmental entities often kind of give themselves permission to be in any district, functionally speaking, it's really pretty similar. Everything's inside. People are going to come in, get what they need, and then go out. There's no outdoor activity or anything that would be different in function. The immediate neighboring properties are road right-of-way on 2 sides and 3 sides actually, and a shared retention pond. So there's no indication that there'd be any issue created there. The proposed use shall not involve an element or cause a condition that may be dangerous, injurious, noxious to any other properties and persons. There's no reason to think there'd be anything dangerous, injurious, or noxious. Finding appears to be met. The proposed use shall be sited, oriented, and landscaped so the relationship of its buildings and grounds to adjacent buildings and properties do not impair health, safety, general welfare, or comfort, nor adversely affect values. Again, with road right-of-ways and a retention pond most immediately there, and then the hotel and the John Deere on the other side, it would not appear that this is going to have a detrimental effect. In fact, normally when you keep space in a building rented, you have better cash flow for the owners, which results in better maintenance of the building and a positive effect on the adjacent area. So the finding would appear to be met. 4, the proposed use shall produce a total environmental effect consistent with and not harmful to the environment of the neighborhood and will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of the surrounding property for uses already legally permitted in the district. Staff does not anticipate that a clinic would have any effect, positive or negative, on the environment of the neighborhood or the improvement of surrounding properties, given that it'll be entirely in the existing building. So the finding appears to be met. 5, the proposed use shall organize vehicular access and parking to minimize conflicting traffic movement on adjacent streets. There's 34 spaces here already, which is more than the ordinance requires for all 3 uses added together. All the parking is off-street and no new curb cuts are being created, so there should not be any change in the current traffic flows anticipated. The standard would appear to be met. 6, the proposed use has taken or will take adequate measures to provide utilities, access roads, drainage, and other necessary facilities. This one's fairly simple with this regard because, again, it's all in the existing building, so there's not changes taking place in these areas. 7, the proposed use shall promote the objectives of the ordinance and be consistent with the City of Frankfort's comprehensive plan. So the Unified Development Ordinance clearly states that this is a special exception use, meaning it may be appropriate to approve in the industrial district in some situations. This particular site is too small for industrial uses, and this existing building is better suited to office space than general industry. As a result, approving the use would seem to promote the objectives of the ordinance. The 2035 comprehensive plan generally does note that industrial districts are primarily for industrial users. It also readopts the 2004 State Road 28 overlay plan, which indicates this area is for general industrial. Neither document, however, gets into a parcel by parcel detail or discusses how to handle this area where you're blending older development patterns and newer ones, and they're merging, which is kind of right around 200 West, which was annexed in the early 2000s. So given all of that, staff thinks that this proposed use is still consistent with the comprehensive plan for two reasons. First, it's a clinic to meet mental health needs. Mental health, much like medical and dental, is a need that's widespread through all demographics of a local population, including those who work in industrial parks. So a clinic that on a parcel that's too small in a building that already exists, will serve and support people through the community, including the employees of the industrial uses around this site. And two, again, this site is not most suited to industrial uses. Approving it does not reduce or limit the ability of the industrial district around it to continue to be used as planned in the comprehensive plan, but it does place a supporting use in an existing location that's unlikely to ever have a factory built on it because of the businesses that are already in this commercial subdivision. Approving a use on this site for a medical clinic does not undermine the comprehensive plan goals for the area. It just allows an existing building to be fully utilized that's not most suited to industrial uses. So this finding would appear to be met. Consequently, staff recommends to approve the special exception based on the findings in the staff report incorporated in the motion by reference. And I'm going to pause here because I'm new to working with you guys. So I don't know if you want to discuss the special exception and then handle it first and then move to the variances, or if you want me to present the remaining pages, which are more lengthy on the variances, and then come back to all of it. What's your preference?
Alicia, would we be okay to continue hearing the staff report and then approving all in one motion?
I would probably approve the special exceptions separate from the variances, but you can hear all of the staff report and then do a motion to accept the special exceptions and then a motion to accept the variances or deny them. But I would do those separate just in case there are any conditions that we want to apply or anything like that.
Okay. I think we will do them separate, but at the end, is that okay with the board?
I'd just as soon do them separate, yes.
Okay. All right. So we'll continue with the staff report and then do that at the end.
Yeah, does that sound good? Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
Okay, perfect. Not a problem. All right, so I'm going to move now to analyzing the developmental variances, the 6 of them, and I'll try my best to keep this clear. It jumps around a little bit. Hopefully you guys have looked at the staff report and will be able to track with me for the record. So in the Unified Development Ordinance, there's 3 findings that have to be found affirmatively in order to grant a variance. The first is that the approval will not be injurious to public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. So first off, with regards to the impervious surface request, Dan Sheets, the last fall, provided a report when the BZA was originally going to hear an impervious surface variance on this site that was withdrawn. And he confirmed that all the drainage on the site flows to the retention pond to the west, and there is sufficient capacity for anticipated runoff. I did double check with him to make sure nothing had changed when I wrote the staff report, and he confirmed that that would still be the surveyor's opinion. So this variance would not seem to have any injurious effect, and that finding would be met. Second, the variance for parking in the required front yard and the variance for parking in a required green space. So I've sort of combined those because in the overlay, the green space is the first 60 foot adjacent to 28, and then your required front setback in your industrial area is kind of within that. So you're basically looking at the same area with just 2 different regulations affecting it. So in this case, we've got an existing parking lot that, while illegal, has not generated complaints or issues that staff is aware of in terms of anything injurious. And it was issued a permit at the time that it went in. So staff would not find that granting a variance to allow an expansion of that in line is going to do any additional harm beyond what's already there. 3, a variance for parking in a required buffer yard. So this actually refers to the side buffer yard, and we got a final site plan after there was an error on Beacon that was corrected. And it turns out there's going to be 21 foot remaining of grass between the new parking addition and the west property line. So the required buffer yard there needs, depending on what option they select, 10 to 20 foot in width. So in this case, the variance is simply not needed as long as nothing's changing in their site plan for going to the side. They have adequate room. When they first had looked at this with what was on Beacon, they thought they'd be going right to that side property line. There was a significant error in where that was drawn that we were able to get corrected with the surveyor's office. Next, the variance for reducing or eliminating plantings in green space and the required parking lot perimeter planting. So again, as I go through this, I'm combining these two variances into one conversation because we're basically talking about the same area. And so I felt like they really should be handled together. There's no practical reason to separate them. So this sits between two legal nonconforming uses built in the late 1990s. There's not ever been a berm here, and the lack thereof would not seem to be injurious. There's also no room between this parking lot and the front property line to put both the required 6 foot of parking perimeter plus the 60-foot green space. Even if we were going to argue about one or the other, there's just simply not space. There's about 10 foot between the north edge of the parcel and where the pavement is that the existing lot is, and then they would expand into. Losing connectivity for pedestrians, in staff's opinion, is actually more injurious in general to the overall community plans than having fewer plantings. The two legal nonconforming properties do meet the required front setbacks for the base district at the time of construction. It was 40 foot for Liberty Chevy, which is now your John Deere. And that was built in 93, and then they added some parking lot to sit at about 35 foot. I didn't do the research to figure out if that was a legal or illegal addition to the parking lot, since we're not looking at that site today. And the hotel is a Holiday Inn that was in the B4 district and had a 25-foot setback, but was built at 35. Sidewalk has been extended partway between the city and these properties with the Last State Road 28 project. We anticipate it's going to continue to extend as the state continues to do work. This property is designed in a way that it does create a challenge for getting a sidewalk across the front when everything else legal nonconforming was actually built to setback except for this. And so there's adequate room on them, but not on this one. So staff feels the finding is met with respect to the berm and in terms of installing the full landscaping, but staff's not sure it is fully met with regards to granting 100% variances that result in permanently having no landscaping at all and having no provisions whatsoever for the required pedestrian connectivity that should have had space reserved for it in the 60-foot green space area if the site had followed the rules when it was constructed. So that finding is partly met by staff's opinion. 2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. So again, moving back to the impervious surface as the first one, this building predates the 2023 Unified Development Ordinance, which is where the city first added impervious surface standards. There's many standards that are the same between the ordinances, but that's new. That said, all the storm water drains into an approved retention pond, which does have adequate capacity. So this finding would seem to be met. There wouldn't be any concern. 2, variance for parking in the required front yard and parking in required green space. So again, we've got an existing parking lot that's already there. We've not had complaints. It would appear that adjacent property is not being affected negatively, and adding 6 parking spaces is not likely to change that. So the finding would be met for those. 3, the variance for parking in the required buffer yard. Again, there was that error to the side setback. So as long as nothing's changed in their site plan since that was revised, this variance is just simply not needed for them to add that parking. And finally, variance for reducing or eliminating the plantings in the green space and the parking lot perimeter plantings. So eliminating the berms and reducing the plantings would not affect adjacent property negatively, but lacking a green space plan that allows for pedestrian connectivity does, especially as we've got a hotel sitting further out from Frankfurt that currently when people walk from that, they're walking in 28, and ultimately the plans say they would have some way of walking off the road in that design, and our green space loses us where that's supposed to go. So 3, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. So again, back to the impervious surface request. And again, this building predates that 2023 Unified Development Ordinance. So this site already is at the maximum that was adopted for the district in 2023. So any addition of anything at all, no matter what they do, bounces them into needing that variance. So the finding would appear to be met. They don't have a way to avoid that. 2, the variances for parking in the required front yard and in the required green space. So again, as we previously noted, the permits for this were issued without the required reviews and compliance on the ordinances that were on the books at the time. And the owner back then who developed it put it in that way. The current owner was not involved in that. They purchased it as is. It would logically be a practical difficulty to expect the owner to pick up, move, or remove that parking lot that's been there for 18 years. Given where the building was placed, even if somebody were to try to move it, there's really nowhere to go with it. You've got a road on the other side. Anywhere you put that parking without moving the building is going to create different sets of variance requests. So given the lack of options, it would seem that having a lot impinge on required setbacks is unavoidable, and extending it is not going to make that worse. So they would have a practical difficulty with regards to that, and the finding would be met. 3, variance for parking in the required buffer yard. Again, noting with this one, this variance isn't needed. With the revised site plan, they've got 21 foot of setback, and the buffer yard, depending on how many plantings go in it, is between 10 and 20 foot wide. So even if they went with the widest option, they have no impingement on it. And finally, the variance for reducing and eliminating the plantings in the green space and the required parking lot perimeter plantings. There is undoubtedly a practical difficulty in terms of fitting a berm and the full required green space plus the parking lot perimeter plantings and the sidewalk space in the room available. In fact, you'd be partway back into the building and there wouldn't be room left on the lot beyond that to build anything. So there's no question there's practical difficulty here, irregardless of the fact that it didn't come through the proper variances it should have gotten before it built. It would have needed some at that time if it had come through, and probably would have obtained them because of the size of the lot. So it would not be appropriate to attempt to move that existing parking lot or change what's there. And adding on to that parking lot in general also would not increase the problem that we're looking at on the site. That said, staff does not see a practical difficulty that prevents any consideration at all of pedestrian connectivity across the lot or any additional plantings of any kind. It might be appropriate, by staff's opinion, to discuss a compromise to improve the situation while also legalizing what's there in terms of the parking lot. So future owners, there wouldn't be a question about the legality of that. We've discussed it in today's hearing. So staff feels that space could be reserved for future sidewalk, and then a smaller set of plantings could be installed in front of or to either side of the parking lot. Staff did note the surrounding land is ill-maintained and overgrown, so shrubs are unlikely to have much impact on the site, and large evergreens are bushy at the bottom and would take space not available between the parking line and the parking lot, property line and parking lot, and make fitting a walkway in around them difficult. Additionally, staff noted that smaller or narrow deciduous or evergreen trees might be most appropriate because there are some overhead electric lines in INDOT's right-of-way adjacent to the property. So a giant 60-foot tree that gets out and gets really bushy is just going to end up being hacked off if it grows. It wouldn't be appropriate in this site. So staff would find that the finding for this variance request is partially met, and staff would support a significant partial, but not 100% complete variance from these standards. Staff will note, and I think that the applicant will clarify when they speak, staff and the applicant are not in full agreement on how we view those findings. So the BZA will have to work out how they feel, but they were provided with a staff report and we knew we had different viewpoints on it going in. So leading then to the recommendations on the variance. First, staff would recommend to approve the developmental variances from 304 through 8.06G and 402.16B and to make them to include the existing parking lot. So there's no question about the legality thereof moving forward. Based on the findings in the staff report incorporated in the motion by reference, with the following condition, the applicant would agree to allow future pedestrian infrastructure to be placed on the northern 10 foot of the lot as needed in the event that walkways are extended from the east across their site in the future in order to preserve that part of the intent of the required green space that I do not believe a BZA would have waived the requirement for had they properly heard this back when it was built. Separately, staff would recommend to partially approve the developmental variances for 402.16E and G. That's your parking lot perimeter plantings and your green space plantings, with the following notes on that partial: granting a 100% variance from the earthen mound or berm requirement in the green space, granting a 100% variance from parking lot perimeter plantings on the north side, granting an 80% variance from parking lot perimeter plantings on the west and south sides to modify it from 3 shade trees, 2 ornamental trees, and 20 shrubs to simply 5 trees of any type the applicant wishes, spaced west and south of the new lot area, as there's no restriction on those sides to space. And then a 60% variance from planting requirements on the north side to reduce the requirement from 3, well, I'm going to do the total. I think you can kind of read it, but the total along that front would be 8 shade, 5 ornamental, and 25 shrubs, to just reduce that to 10 trees of any type spaced along the north side, with the recommendation that slender, upright, or medium ornamental varieties like an arborvitae or a decorative plum that won't enter power lines are selected. And just accept that this lot is never going to fully meet what the intent was, but try to do the best we can to meet what the intent of the comprehensive plan and the ordinances are. And then finally, staff would recommend to deny the developmental variance request from UDO 306.12C simply because it's unneeded based on the submitted site plan. And that would be based on the findings of the staff report incorporated by reference. Staff would additionally note that while the Board of Zoning Appeals is prohibited by state law from approving or denying a petition based upon financial cost or financial criteria, it does bear noting that staff disagrees with the applicant's stance that planting anything at all of any kind is cost prohibitive, and staff does not feel that planting 15 trees with the applicant's freedom to choose the varieties and types is cost prohibitive by default. Staff is certainly willing to reach out to Soil and Water, Boy Scouts, and other local groups to see if someone wants to help the developer as a community project, which the developer suggested they would prefer. But even if the developer gets the trees themselves, many trees that would be suitable locally have a cost under $30 a tree, assuming you're planting them small and not trying to buy something that's 10 years old and 6 feet tall, which would be less than $500 total and can be planted fairly quickly in spring or fall, as they are just small, trees, not things that are large and require a gigantic hole. Additionally, staff would note Soil and Water does give away native trees on Arbor Day each year locally, which could be an option for some or all of these, depending on what varieties they offer. A 210 square foot parking area addition, depending on the base and the paving surface selected, is generally expected to cost between $5,000 and $15,000. So landscaping costs for what staff proposes would be around 3 to 10% of the cost of the lot addition, depending on the exact cost of the lot versus the plantings. So staff just wanted to point out in their opinion that I did take into consideration whether or not it was, an insanely high expense. I would note the expense at this site complied with everybody else who's, in that area would be substantially higher, but staff doesn't feel that it's unreasonable out the gate. That said, the variance requests were for complete waivers, so the BZA can grant up to a complete waiver or anything less than that, because you can grant less than, but not more than whatever is requested. And if you have questions for me later on, I'll be available.
Thank you, Liz. At this time, we'll call on petitioner to speak additionally.
Thank you. My name is Brian Foxworthy. My address is 11234 East Highgrove Circle in Zionsville, 46077. I'm here on behalf of the property owner, Del DeMayo, regarding the request for a special exception and associated variances for the property at the southwest corner of 28 and County Road 200. At a high level, this is a very straightforward request. We're not proposing any expansion to the building or any changes in the overall character of the site. We're simply looking to lease an existing vacant suite to Valley Oaks for a mental health clinic, something that serves a real and growing need in this community. From a land use perspective, this fits naturally with what already exists on the site. The building is currently occupied by the BMV and Child and Family Services. So this continues that same office and service-oriented use. Everything happens within the building, and we don't anticipate any negative impacts to the traffic, noise, or the surrounding properties. Importantly, the site already meets the required parking under the ordinance. This request for a small parking expansion is simply to accommodate operational preferences by Valley Oaks, not because the site's deficient. We understand and appreciate staff's, Liz in particular, analysis and recommendations. This is an older site that predates many of today's standards, and we recognize the importance of working toward better alignment where it's reasonable to do so. To that end, we are supportive of staff's recommended conditions. Specifically, We are comfortable reserving space along the frontage for future pedestrian connectivity, and we are willing to incorporate the reduced landscaping plan as outlined in the staff report. Our goal here is to be practical and collaborative, allowing a much-needed community service to occupy an existing building while making reasonable improvements to the site where feasible. We believe the request meets all of the findings for the special exception, and that the variance request, particularly as conditioned by staff, are justified given the existing conditions of the property. We respectfully ask for your approval this evening. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. At this time, we'll go ahead and take questions and open discussion to the public.
I have a question. Liz mentioned that you guys disagreed on something. It sounded like you just agreed to the plantings.
So we're okay with adding 5 plantings on the south and west side expansion. Up front on the northern side of the property, adding 10 plantings on property we don't own is where we're having a hard time. But the south and the west locations, we can do that.
Well, so again, Del DeMayo with Stamp Development as well, and Brian's on our team. 101 West Ohio Street, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46204. Yeah, we originally bought this site. We do a lot of development work for the state of Indiana. So when we originally came to Frankfort was to help the state establish, first of all, the Department of Child Services had a horrible location downtown that just was having much issues. So we worked with them, and then BMV, and then which leads into this is that what's so very interesting is the only reason any of us are here is because we're trying to give Valley Oaks better access to the front for their people to access mental health services. Everything that's here, we don't need to do. So like putting in a parking lot is what's being done in order to accommodate the tenant. And, is it a requirement that has to be done for the tenant? They would like it to happen. And I think we see it as good. Now, as far as planning goes and things like that, what we've always talked about is expanding the building. So planting trees and then ripping out trees after you've planted them for 3 or 4 years just didn't seem to make a lot of sense, especially in the front of the area. So our property line ends right where the front is. So I'm not sure where you guys are going to put a sidewalk, and I'm not sure where you're going to allocate area for trees. So that is actually the property line of the state of Indiana where it sits today. Because we basically have built up kind of to where our property line is.
The survey and the documents show there's 10 foot of green space there. It's got a little slope, but it could be reconfigured. When you run a sidewalk, you're gonna have to reconfigure it
Right.
anyway for whatever you're on. But there is some space there between the parking lot.
Right, and we have no problem with allowing the city to do that,
So
but that's not something that, like, you're talking about going down 10 feet and bringing up dirts and then planting trees in
I
there, is that
will
what you
not be
mean?
on the record. So I guess I would note, like, who or where, nothing in this motion is dictating who's paying for what, but I will note, if you do a building expansion, the State Road 28 overlay says, then at that point, you're gonna have to put in the sidewalk that complies, irregardless of what's on both
1000%,
sides.
because I'm gonna buy and put
So,
more land in it
Yeah,
to make it larger.
so I guess I just wanna know, when you get to that point, if that's the way that you go, some of these conversations will come back up
It sure will.
because of the
when we're ready to
building,
deal
and
with it.
and some
Yeah.
of them may come back here.
Yeah.
But, so I deliberately didn't try to specify on that whether you were paying for a sidewalk or the city was paying for a sidewalk, just that there was supposed to be, when it was created, space for that in that 60 foot. Obviously, there's no 60 foot there, but making sure everyone's on one page that, like, there
So
does
you
need
are
to be
asking us to put
something.
in trees and sidewalk, or not sidewalk, but you're asking us to put in trees?
I'm asking you to recognize that you're reserving space for future sidewalk of unknown width, but not more than 10 foot. Be recognized up there if you'd gone through a proper site plan and development plan process, not you, but the previous owner, that would have been designated on all your adopted
Which makes a lot of sense why there
paperwork.
wasn't a sidewalk there, because
So-
it's an industrial district. And the only place I've ever seen sidewalks in an industrial district is in Whitestown, because they just built it all brand new. So that makes a lot of sense why there's no sidewalk there. Plus, it's surrounded by a detention pond to the west And then there's also
Yeah.
a huge ditch in the front to the
Yeah.
north.
So the part that not being local, like our long-term plans would actually
To do
state
that,
that sidewalks
yeah.
are going all the way out. And there's other places where we're trying to reach, and the city is now annexed all the way out to the interchange. So that's going to get developed as time goes
that's
on
exactly- we're
to be
here.
urban rather than rural. But no, my only point there is it's the trees and that. I mean, the board can decide, but I want to make sure you know, if you're asking about costs on sidewalks, if you expand the building, then irregardless of what else is happening around or what
Yeah,
programs,
then I'm gonna
then
buy this lot. behind
those
it and all that.
conversations are
Yeah,
gonna be part of
exactly,
it.
100%, yeah.
Yep.
But today, that's not what we're doing.
And-
All we're doing is providing parking so that Apple Valley Health Valley Oaks Health can have better access.
And
to the
that
front of the
commitment
suite.
does not require you to install a sidewalk. It
That's
just
correct.
requires you to state that that front 10 foot is reserved, that
But the
when
trees
that
in the
conversation
rear
comes
are
on.
required. That is what you're
So-
requiring.
I think what I recommended was 5 spread between the south and the west in lieu of the more dense parking lot perimeter planting and side buffer yard plantings that would normally be in that area.
And that's the confusion. And that's
Can-
exactly.
But
what
leaving
you're
you
getting
with
to. I'm trying to
freedom,
Figure out.
leaving you with freedom to figure out what species and exactly how you want
Right.
to set them so
That's
that
no
you can try to
problem.
work with your site.
So if you guys, so you're saying the west and the south side, you're good with. The front
5
side,
trees with
the
that
front,
front.
the front side, you're not good with. But my question about the front side is where you could plant on the front side would later have to be taken up to put a sidewalk there, Liz? Is that correct? Is that the same property that would have to be turned into a sidewalk or could be turned into a sidewalk? That's my question. My question is, if we planted trees in the front, would that be planting trees in the part that may have to be a sidewalk? If the trees were planted in front, as requested, is that same ground, the ground that will be in the future probably be a sidewalk?
I think it would depend on the sidewalk alignment and on the width of the sidewalk. That's gonna depend on design. There's no way to know. I think staff
But the be-
definitely
but
would
the be-
recommend picking not gigantic trees, not things that have a lot of spread, but looking at more conical, upright.
So, but it's so if.
that would be
so if-
narrow.
So if we approved the side, the west and the south, the west side and the south side trees and disregarded allow it for the front side, everybody'd be happy, right?
Correct.
On their side, I don't know
The-
that I would, yeah. I
You-
mean,
you
it
don't know
depends on who you're asking.
Yeah, that's true. That's
You know,
true.
staff would feel that if, you know, the things that we don't know at this point in time and have no way to know.
But
are-
there's good potential. There'll be sidewalk out there.
If you did a 5 foot sidewalk and then you had 5 foot green, there are lots of upright street type trees that can grow in a 4x4 area without any issue. Conversely,
What
if
does
this goes in
IDEM
with
do?
a street project and NDOT ends up aligning the sidewalk down in the right of way instead of up here, now there's nothing that conflicts with trees. So the trees may or may not, you know, have an issue down the road, but if they're waived completely, there'll never be any semblance of the look that was the goal, and no other site has ever gotten a complete waiver. There's been lots of strong modifications because of issues, but everything has always tried to move closer. So I think where I came at it is that, to make it the only one to just completely ignore. Now, I definitely think, you know, other options are those front trees don't necessarily have to be put in a perfect line. They could be, you know, kind of grouped or tried to set more to corners. I mean, there's different ways. I tried to leave some freedom in how I wrote the staff report for some choice. If I was planting them, I would probably pick something that's conical and handles being on streets and around salt fine and sits closer to the parking lot rather than down the hill closer to the property line, so that there would be room for this, you know, if it was say a 5 foot sidewalk, for it to sit, you know, next to the trees. But there's no way to know all that at this point.
True.
Staff has a concern about eliminating the possibility of it ever being right.
And I'd like to add too that, visibility for our tenants is very important. People knowing where they are. So if we have trees, and I know we talked about them starting small, but trees grow. Blocking off signage visibility, that's just going to affect our tenants' visibility. So just want to make note of that.
And I think the other issue I had too, I don't know what IDEM's gonna say, but whenever I see cattails in something, I know that typically might cause some issues, so I'm not even sure what it's gonna require for us to put any trees in our
Are you
request.
talking about on the drainage?
That's all part of where you're asking to rip it up, because that's where our parking lot ends right here. So then you go immediately into cattails.
So only on this corner, if, I do have another picture, you've actually
The full-
got some green space there.
This here, those
Um,
in the staff report.
yeah, if you look down, you've actually got some space
Yeah, and
that's
I'm-
not in
so
cattails
the-
and some
the state
space
of
over
Indiana
on the
is not
corner.
okay with putting signage, putting trees in
So-
front of their signage. So yeah, we're not willing to put trees in front of the building signage where people identify with the BN, because that's the Clinton County BNB. That is not tied to Frankfurt. That's people from all over Clinton County coming in. So that signage being extremely visibility
I think
is
it's-
very important.
It's gonna be their choice.
100%
If
it's
you
your
look at
choice.
other
You're
sites
right.
throughout the overlay, landscaping and identification have not created problems for other sites.
Sure.
But it's, at the end of the day, it's, it's BZA discretion. I just came at it from the perspective of the comprehensive plan as best I could.
I understand.
Do we have any other questions for the public? Hearing none, I'll close public discussion. I'll now open discussion for the board. At this time, board, do we have any questions? Okay, hearing none, I'll close discussion for the board. Alicia, before we get into a motion here, so we'll go special exception and then developmental variances.
So, because there are many of each, if the board is wanting to approve or deny, there are, it looks like, there's one special exception, but then there are multiple variances. So if the board wants to approve some of those variances, but not all of the variances, we would need to probably state which ones we're approving and which ones we're denying. I would probably recommend that we do separate motions for that. So if you wanted to approve some of them, I would do a motion to approve this one, and this one. And then if you wanted to deny them, then I would do a separate motion for that or give a favorable or unfavorable recommendation. But I would take the special exception first and deal with that and then do the variances. And then to the degree that you wish to give a favorable recommendation or unfavorable recommendation, I would split those out. But you can do multiple together if you're, if you have the same opinion on some of them.
Okay, thank you, Alicia. We'll now entertain a motion for the special exception.
I'll make a motion that we accept the special exception as recommended by the board.
I have first, I have
Or
second.
maybe I should have stated it a different way, I guess.
Staff
Anyway.
report.
Staff report, thank you, Liz. So the special exception, I recommend we favorable, or I pass the special exception itself. As a separate, that's the first thing, we get that out of the way, so to speak.
So the motion is to approve the special exception.
Yes, yes,
Perfect.
made by Mike. Do we have to agree unanimously on all of this stuff?
That's correct.
Because there's only three of us here. Yes, okay,
Yes, you do.
thank you.
Yes, you do.
I have first, I will second the special exception. We have first and a second. We have roll call, please.
Mike Nichols,
Aye.
Scott Highlander,
Aye.
Isaac Chavez.
Aye. All right, now taking a look at the developmental variances.
Just for organization, it might help you if you look at like page 9 of the staff report where I list out under one of the findings, the different groups, so you can see what they're for with the numbers and cross-reference that with the last page where I didn't note what they were, but I just noted the numbers so you kind of know what you're looking at for which.
Okay, so the first variance we're dealing with is with impervious service, dealing with UDO 304. I'll open a motion to the board.
So we need to go down through each one of these UDOs.
Correct, each variance, yes. I will motion to approve variance for impervious service UDO 304.
I'll make the motion.
First and a second, roll call, please.
Mike Nichols,
Aye.
Scott Highlander,
Aye.
Isaac Chavez.
Aye. Moving forward, we'll take a look at the variance for parking in required front yard, UDO 308.06, Section G, and parking in required green space, UDO 402.16B. Given that the existing parking lot was in this place illegally in both the required front yard and required green space, but has not generated complaints by neighboring properties. Staff is aware and would appear that the adjacent property is not being affected negatively, and an additional 6 parking spaces will likely not change that. I will motion to approve variance for parking in the required front yard UDO 308.06 and parking in required green space UDO 402.16B. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Mike Nichols,
Aye.
Scott Highlander,
Aye.
Isaac Chavez.
Aye. Next, we'll take a look at the variance for parking in required buffer yard that deals with UDO 306.12G. According to the final site plan, after an error on Beacon was corrected based on the survey submitted, there will be 21 feet remaining grass between the new parking addition and the west property line. The required buffer yard, depending on which option is selected, needs 10 to 20 feet in width so that the lot will not enter it at all. And this variance is not needed as long as that remains true. I will now open a motion for variance for parking in required buffer yard, UDO 306.12C. I will motion to approve variance for parking in required buffer yard, UDO 306.12C. Do I have a second?
If you're going to approve, then
we
you'll need
wanna-
to
we want-
specify different findings in the staff report for your approval.
Because the staff
Because the staff
report,
report doesn't list findings in support of approving because it wasn't needed.
in other words, the staff report.
So we don't need to vote on this?
Well, they've requested it, so you need to do something. The staff report recommended you deny it because it's not a needed variance in their final site plan. If you wish to approve it, then you would need to have different findings in the staff report to follow the state law requirement that your motions be based on those findings. So
I'd recommend that, did you already make the?
Yeah, I will amend that to deny.
I'll second that. That way, that we deny UDO 306.12C because it's not required.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Would that be a first from Mike?
So why don't we have Isaac rescind his motion,
Okay, I'll rescind.
and
my
then
motion.
we have Mike make the motion to deny it because it's not needed, and that would be our first. And then we would need a second.
Second.
First and a second, roll call, please.
Mike Nichols,
Aye.
Scott Highlander,
Aye.
Isaac Chavez.
Okay, next we'll take a look at the variance for reduced and eliminated required plantings in green space and required parking lot perimeter plantings. This deals with UDO 402.16E and G. This includes eliminating berms and reducing plantings would not affect adjacent property negatively, but lacking a green space plan that allows for pedestrian connectivity does. This finding is partially met.
I would know, you don't have to reread my findings.
Okay.
Mayor. I wasn't trying to tell you to do that. I was just saying to reference which ones, because on the last page, it doesn't tell you what
All right.
numbers go with.
I have Isaac, if I could, I'd like to ask Liz a question here.
Alicia.
Not Liz, Alicia a question.
Yes.
Okay, the staff recommendation is what we were recommendations for as planting and so forth was what we were discussing earlier. And I'd like
Correct.
I'd like to make a motion that we recommend this partial improvement, but change the partial improvement. Can we do that? In other words, I want to eliminate the requirement for the front.
Yeah, you can do that. And I don't think that would necessarily change the findings as I laid them out. You're just dividing the partial variance differently than I proposed it in the staff report.
So we'd be
You
recommend,
need to specify how you're changing. it.
yeah, yes. So
Yes.
So we'd be recommending partial approval.
I think Alicia was trying to add something to
Oh,
that.
I'm
too.
sorry,
She's just
Alicia.
behind you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry. So, what Liz said is correct. So the findings of fact in the staff report recommended a partial approval. So what you'll need to do is outline specifically which ones you want to approve, and if there's one that you want to change. And I'm guessing based on the conversation that we're maybe wanting to change the one that's about the front of the lot. Is that right?
Yeah, so you
That's
could-
what
Okay.
that's what I'd like to propose, yes.
Okay, so what I would recommend is if you're okay with the 100% variance for the berm, the 100% variance for the perimeter plantings on the north, and the 80% variance from the west and south sides, I would recommend approving those variances. And then if you don't want the 60% variance, then we can do that kind of as a separate thing. But that way it's very clear what you're approving based on the staff report and what we're changing.
Okay.
So is that what we want to do?
Yes, I think it's just a matter of wording that for Mike.
Okay. So we would want to approve a 100% variance from the earthen mound berm requirement in green space. We would want to approve the 100% variance from parking lot perimeter plantings on the north side, and we would want to approve an 80% variance from parking lot perimeter plantings on the west and south sides, from 3 shade, 2 ornamental, 20 shrubs to 5 trees of any type that the applicant wishes spaced west and south of the new lot area. And so that would be the motion that we would need to make.
Alicia,
Yes.
could, just a question, I'm new on this side, but could they simply,
Uh-huh.
because the findings haven't changed, could they simply just add to that motion that they are additionally going to do a 100% variance from the planting
Yes.
requirements on the north side instead of the staff report specified 60%, and then it's all
Yes,
covered
they-
in one?
Yes, they could do that if they wanted to. I was just trying to make it a little bit more simple by splitting it up, but that's fine.
I'm good with either way, whatever you think simpler.
So essentially the motion would be 100% variance from the berm, 100% variance for the parking lot from the north, 80% variance as described in the staff report on the south and west sides, and a 100% variance from the front is the motion that would need to be made to encapsulate everything. So if someone wants to move that.
We want a 100% variance on the front? What do you mean?
If you're eliminating. all
So
those
what
variants, that would
what
be-
Liz has recommended and the staff report has recommended is that they plant 5.
Yeah, I know. I'm
shade
looking,
trees
I'm looking at
Yeah,
what it says.
so-
I'm just
Okay.
curious about whether it's 0% or 100%.
Yeah, so 0% variance would mean
100% would mean-
variance.
Oh,
Right. 100% variance means that we're completely giving them a pass on that.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't have to meet any
Correct.
tree requirements
okay.
Correct.
or greenery requirements.
On the front.
So it would be 100%.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the 80% would be the south and west.
Correct.
So the other way to look at that 80% is 80% of what's required is being waived. You're installing 20%, which is.
Oh, okay. I see. Okay.
So, or
So-
in the case of this, you know, how you're going 100% is being waived, we're installing 0%.
So, I'd like to make the motion that we partially approve UDO 402.16E NG as followed. 100%, 100%, 80%, 100%, as listed in the staff report.
Except for the 60% becomes 100%.
Yeah,
That would be
well, that's what I mean,
different.
yeah.
That's what he said.
Perfect.
And then
Makes sense,
we
okay.
just need to make sure in the minutes that we get all of the actual language.
I hear first, I get a second.
Second.
You could piecemeal it together.
I will second.
He seconded.
Oh, you did, Scott? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah.
Very good.
That was Mike and Scott first and second. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mike Nichols,
Aye.
Scott Highlander,
Aye.
Isaac Chavez.
Aye. Was there another variance?
Yeah, I had my percentages backwards.
That's it.
Yeah.
For you guys, yeah, I've got one thing under other business when I get to it.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate you very much.
Guys, have a good
Look
evening.
forward to coming back too.
Have a good evening, okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Before we move on to any old business, I did roll on over our election of officers. I did that because we don't have a full staff here. Are we okay with tabling election of officers to next meeting?
Did we, I thought we had elected officers.
No. Oh, we did? I don't know. I had that on my on my personal agenda. I'm sorry. It's
It's in, the-
It's been a long-
that's what the
it's been a
minute-
long week,
That's what
I'm
the minutes
sorry.
are on January of 14th, Isaac.
okay. I'm still president. I knew that. All right, moving on. Do you have any
important
other
stuff.
business for us, Liz?
Yeah, I have one item. Did you print off copies?
Yes, of the BZA
So-
agenda.
yeah, so
Yep, our
I'm going to try to
application.
briefly brief you on this conversation, and we don't necessarily have to do something about it tonight. We can. So this is going to fall under amendments to your board rules and your applications. There have been some cases that have come through in recent months where once they've gotten into the nitty gritty in the office, it's turned out that there wasn't as good of communication with utilities and other entities as maybe would have been ideal, which is not at all on the board. But there's a concern that had come up with city council and with the mayor and building services staff that for future applications, we try to make sure that when someone's filed, they've actually talked to all the utilities and the street department and made sure that there's not a major issue that this board should be aware of when they're having the conversation about whether or not to approve. So Grace has been awesome in kind of putting this together as a draft, and Alicia's taken a quick look, and I do have one recommended amendment from how it is, but kind of go through. It's the same except for these changes. On the first page, unrelated to what I'm talking about, Grace had changed this contact to be the general building services email instead of Don Stock's information. So that will come to all staff in the office. On the bottom of the second page, we've added a new requirement for filing, which is a utility sign-off sheet. And Grace has placed a description that reads, the petitioner is required to obtain signatures from all departments listed on attachment B. This process allows each department to determine whether utilities can be provided to the location where the proposed project will take place. For additions to existing structures, it also allows up departments to identify any existing utility lines that may interfere with the project site. It is also the petitioner's responsibility to obtain a drainage level letter from the Clinton County Surveyor's Office. So we're putting this before filing instead of trying to chase it down later on and then finding out there's a reason why a site maybe can't be developed and maybe we didn't want to lead them down that path. So then if you turn to the very back of what you've got a new attachment D, which is a utility sign-off sheet for BZA filing, where they fill out their information. And then we're looking at sending this, the mayor had wanted all utilities involved and then the surveyor. So we've put Frankfurt Power and Light, Sewer Maintenance, Water Department, Clinton County Surveyor, Street Department / INDOT if it's on a state road, and then CenterPoint Energy. My recommended change, which I didn't get a chance to talk to Grace and Alicia with before, is I felt we modified this off a form that's used for permitting. And it says approved or denied, but they're not actually giving a final approval or denial here. They're just giving information. So the one change I recommended is that we change approved and denied to read informed / no concerns or have concerns, and then they can put their comments down below. So what they're actually signing is just that they know and they're in communication and nobody's being surprised. So since this is an amendment to application and rules, you do not have to advertise it for hearing or have it on your agenda ahead of time. You can vote, you would have to vote unanimously in order to adopt the changes in your application, or if you felt that you wanted to take it under advisement and come back to it at your next meeting, you could do that as well. If you were going to adopt it, I would just ask that unless Alicia has an objection or a change to that wording, that we would just make that one change to not say approved and denied and instead indicate they're either okay or they have concerns.
Yeah, that's good information. Thank you, Liz. Alicia, do you have anything to add to that? Would you be okay with moving forward?
I'm comfortable moving forward. Liz and I met and discussed this, and I think it's a good idea. Essentially, the purpose of this is just to ensure that before anyone comes before the BZA, that they have talked to all of the appropriate parties. So they've talked to the street department, the drainage board, whoever needs the utilities. And I think that will eliminate potential future problems where we've had a lot of folks come before the BZA and they haven't yet talked to the drainage board and they haven't yet talked to the utilities. And so we conditionally approve it. And they believe that they've got the green light when really they've got all of these other boards to talk to, and then they run into problems and it just creates a mess. So I think this will eliminate a lot of future problems and will give the board more information upon which to make their decisions. So I am in favor of it as a concept. I haven't had a chance today to look at the specific document itself, but I did discuss it with Liz, and so the concept and what she was planning to put in that document, I did have no problem with. So I'm fine with moving forward with it. And then if we do see any amendments, we can always amend it later as well.
Okay, with that said, I can open a motion to the board? Are you guys okay with making this change? We need a motion in a second.
I make a motion that we accept the changes.
All right, first I hear a second.
I'll second.
All right, first and second, roll call, please.
Mike Nichols,
Aye.
Scott Highlander,
Aye.
Isaac Chavez.
Aye, thank you, Liz. Anything else, guys? All right, hearing nothing, I'll take a motion to adjourn. All motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.